Hello everybody, this is Rebecca Baker and this post is going to be for YouTube video number 4. Now this week we read 3 chapters in the book called Negotiation, chapters 4 to 6. So today I'm going to tell you a little bit about how to exactly negotiate, some barriers in negotiation, and some frequently asked questions as well. We learned a lot in this chapter, so I'm just going to go over the main points and hopefully this will be able to summarize everything we've learned in the 3 chapters. First things first, table tactics. So how exactly one party, two parties, multiple parties go over a negotiation at the table. So it's important to, one, get the other side to want to negotiate with you. Sometimes people will be reluctant and might not think there's anything for them to benefit on their side. So you need to make sure you bring all the evidence and statistics and anything you can, documentation, to the table to support your side of the negotiation, as well as let the other side know what they can benefit from the negotiation as well. So table tactics, let's go back to the beginning, the basics. There's distributive negotiations and integrative. So distributive negotiations are basically kind of like a win-lose situation. One party wins, the other one loses. So in this kind of table tactics, it's very important to anchor your position. So to emphasize what you can gain from the negotiation as well as the other side. And then there's also counter anchoring. So if you put out something and then the other side does, and then you go back and then re-anchor your point about the negotiation to get the leg up, to get the advantage point. It's also important to, in a distributive as well as an integrative negotiation, to always kind of put a timetable or a deadline in a negotiation, especially if you don't want it to take months, years. Negotiations can take a very long time. They're not typically a linear process, and they can be a rigid sequence and take a very long time to finally make a deal, strike a deal, and come up with a decision that benefits both parties. So in an integrative negotiation, it's very important to build relationships, develop a connection between each side, or all 3 parties or more if there's multi-parties within the negotiation, because you want to get them on your good side. You want them to trust you. You want them to deliberate and collaborate with you. So this also leads to value creation through trades. So let's say we can't decide on a monetary value of something that we're negotiating, but I can bring to a table that something doesn't have value to me but has value to the other side of the party. And this is mostly an integrative negotiation, so you can bring that onto the table as well. And also just some general tactics. You want to frame your negotiation as well as you can to get the better advantage on an upper hand on the situation. So taking the glass half empty, half full. You want to frame your negotiation and your benefits and your advantages half full. You want to make your deal sound the best, and you also want to make sure that you kind of frame it more positively than negatively. So you want to make sure the other side thinks that they're getting something, even if they're not. You want to make sure that they're not thinking they're going to lose something. Which brings me to the next chapter, frequently asked questions. These mainly go around price, people, and the process of negotiating. We learned a lot of different kinds of questions that people can have during a negotiation. I don't want to go through each and every single one of them because there are a lot, so I'll just kind of go through the main points. So for price in a negotiation, some questions might be, should I ever state my acceptable range in a negotiation, most likely monetary money value? You don't really want to throw your range out, especially in the beginning regarding any kind of price negotiation, unless you think you can get an upper hand on the situation, but most likely you really want to wait until the very end when you're about to strike a deal. But make sure you always leave some wiggle room for yourself in case you still have to negotiate a little bit more. You always want to make sure you get the upper hand on the situation. And it's also important to never really reveal your bottom line unless you've actually reached it and you really want to walk away from the situation. So about some questions about process. Is it better to reach an agreement by issue or wait until the issue ends? So the book says it's really important to kind of work together to collaborate and agree upon when the best time is to make a deadline. As stated before, especially if it's an integrative negotiation, you want to build relationships and kind of collaborate together and make sure you know when the best deadline is for both parties and not just one person. So is it better to deal with a difficult issue in the beginning, or is it better to deal with it at the end? So this can go both ways. It's important to kind of deal with the easier issues first, just so you can build those relationships and then you can know what kind of strategy the other team has. But at the same time, if you deal with those easier negotiations and easier deals first, and then get to the difficult deals and realize that the other party they're not going to budge, you might have wasted your time. So I guess it's a give or take situation. You want to, in my opinion, I think it'd be better to just kind of get the easier deals out of the way first, because usually then hopefully you can manipulate the other parties to get a negotiation once it's more difficult, because you know their strategies. Some questions about people. So is it appropriate to negotiate over telephone or email, or is it better face-to-face? Now, I think this is very important because in my job, a lot of times people always want to try to strike a deal or negotiate over email, and I don't think that's a good idea. And the book also states that it's not the best. Especially, so for my company, we're a manufacturer and we deal with a whole distribution network who hand out our products to customers or end users. So a lot of times we have to negotiate prices with the distributors. I think it's way important to do this face-to-face opposed to email. If need be, if the distributors are international, then do it over the phone, just so you can hear those nonverbal cues. You can hear it in their voice. But again, it's important to build relationships and develop a kind of a connection between both parties, just so you know how each other negotiate, how each other feel, and you can pick up on those nonverbal cues via someone's voice, their hand gestures, their body movements, their facial expressions. So it is very important to negotiate face-to-face opposed to email or telephone. One more question. How should I react when the other side challenges my credential, state, or authority? This all goes back to how important it is to always have evidence and substantial documentation to bring that to the table in order to negotiate. It's important if you have statistics, data, anything, you need to bring that to the table to not only benefit yourself, but try to benefit the other party and show them, listen, this is a good deal, this is an amazing deal, and I can bring in all this other mutual benefits for each other, and then we can work from there. So it's very important to bring as much evidence to the table as possible. The book next talked about some barriers to negotiations and agreement. And again, we went through a lot of those, so I'm just going to go through a few key ones. So I thought this one was very important. So differences in gender and culture. The entire world is globalizing, coming together. Most companies work internationally. So it's very important to know the culture and the diversity between not only your own company or yourself, but what other companies and parties you're working with in negotiation. For example, my company works with some other distributors in the Middle East. Now, the Middle East does not really respect women very much, and our distribution manager is a woman. So when she's dealing with them, she typically has a different spokesperson speak for her who is a male. So those distributors respect us more and will be more willing to agree to any kind of negotiation or deal that is struck. Another important thing is with the differences in gender and culture. Again, it's important to learn about different cultures. If you're dealing with distributors or parties in Asia, a lot of the times they don't want to talk business right away, especially if you haven't really met. They really want to get to know you first on a personal level. They will ask you personal questions, sometimes even interrupt you, and just want to take you out to dinner and learn about you before even mentioning anything about business. So it's very important to learn about different cultures and diversity before engaging in a negotiation. I'll mention one more barrier to agreement, and that will be lack of trust. So again, sometimes the other party or parties in a negotiation might not trust you or trust your credentials. or trust what you're saying. Many people in negotiations do bluff and do make up lies. So it is important, above all, as I've mentioned before, to have substantial evidence, documentation, statistics, anything you can bring onto the table and physically show the other party, the other side, or the other parties within the negotiation itself. And again, just to kind of bring everything we've learned together, it's very important, like I just mentioned, to bring anything you can to the table to show the other party that you are indeed speaking the truth and that you do have the best interests of both parties at heart. It's also very important to build relationships and develop a connection between either party or multi-parties if possible. And there's going to always be lots of phases in a negotiation. It's never a linear process. So it is always important to make a deadline if possible, but to make sure you do collaborate that deadline between each other. So that about wraps it up for chapters 4 to 6, and hopefully we'll learn a little bit more in the next few chapters. Thank you.